Hi, I'm Stella and welcome to 30 Books, and today I'm speaking with Mira Robertson, who is an author, and she wrote The Unexpected Education of Emily Deans. Welcome to 30 Books, Mira, and thanks for your time.
Thanks for inviting me, Stella. I'm delighted to be here.
Now, I'll do a little bit mini review. I loved your book. It's the story of Emily Dean. I was about to say, what was her name? Emily Dean. And you have described it as a coming-of-age story. Do you want to tell us a little bit about the book?
Yeah, it's set in country Victoria in 1944, so the Second World War is still happening. Emily Dean is 14 and she's sent to stay at her grandmother's property in Western Victoria. She is desperate to leave. She doesn't want to be there, but she can't. There's no way she can avoid it. So she ends up becoming involved in the lives of some of the people around her, in particular her mysterious and rather alluring Aunt Lydia, who is only 7 or 8 years older than her, Claudio, the Italian prisoner of war, who's working on the farm as a farm labourer, and William, who comes back from the war wounded in body and soul. And it's through her involvement in these three, particularly these three, that she gets her unexpected education.
And there's more characters, isn't there, than...
There are, and I think that's one of, if I can say this, I think it's one of the strengths of the novel, that the cast of characters are all equally fascinating and interesting. And although we see everything through Emily's eyes, it's a close third-person novel, you still get a very strong sense of all of those characters, and I think that's a strength of the novel.
Absolutely, that's what I was going to say, that the strength is the character of Emily and the way, because she's intelligent and at the same time quite naive for a 14-year-old.
Yeah, she's definitely naive, and I suppose the other sort of thread that runs through it is literature and her love of literature and the books that she reads and the knowledge that she gains through the reading of those books. In particular one, I won't give that away, but yes, there is a bit of a sexual education going on as well.
So what made you decide to write a book about a young woman? Because this isn't a young adult novel.
No,
at all.
No.
But I think it's suitable for young adults, most definitely.
I agree. Yeah.
So what made you decide to write about a young woman and also in a rural Victoria?
Well, in a way, the spark for the novel came from stories that my mother told me about her visits to her paternal grandparents' property in Western Victoria. During that very time, during the Second World War. So it's kind of, that was the spark, although, Mum died actually before I wrote the novel, which was really a sadness for me, and I'm sure that she would be saying, none of that happened, that's all wrong. But I do think that she would recognise just all kinds of elements that I've put in there. And I guess it's that whole thing of like, you hear something and there'll be just something that gives you an idea for a character. So none of those characters are really based on actual people, but there was always just a little spark there, something that Mum had told me about someone that would, that set my imagination off. I mean, I can give you an example for the character of Lydia, who a lot of people, she is their favourite character in the novel, and I do recall Mum telling me about her aunt who, on the summer evenings, used to wander through the large orchard, shooting the snakes that had come up to drink in the summer months, who'd come up to drink there'd be water in the garden somewhere. So I took that idea of the rather glamorous aunt with the shotgun over her shoulder, shooting snakes in the afternoon.
It's not often when you think about somebody who is does a coming of age and sees the world maybe how it is a little bit more, that they actually have to go to a rural area to do that. Normally when that coming out of age is when you go out into the world.
Yeah, that's a really interesting observation. But I guess for Emily, it's just at that pivotal moment in her life where suddenly other people or adults are becoming three-dimensional to her. So she's seeing them not as they actually are necessarily, but suddenly she's interested in them and in their lives. And I think the nice thing about using her point of view is that because we're not 14 and we're not in 1944, we're actually seeing things that she's describing or thinking or telling us about. We're seeing it differently to her. So
Yes.
there's that lovely irony where you're going, I don't think you've got that quite right,
No.
Emily. And well, let's just see how that pans out. So...
Well, I go out even on further limb because
Yes.
it's 1945 and the war's going.
Yeah,
and
44,
is
yeah.
then 1944.
Yeah.
So is Emily Australia then? That Australia has a coming of age around then?
Yeah, I think that's a really lovely point that you make, and I think I was aware of it as I was writing it, that Australia was on that cusp of something big happening, because really it's post-war that all the European migrants came and changed everything. And so Claudio is a bit of a foreshadowing of that. Even though he's a prisoner of war, he's a bit of a foreshadowing of that, you know, massive immigration that's going to happen and change everything. And the war itself changes things because women suddenly were doing new jobs and different jobs because the men were away. And so, yes, there is a sense of a coming of age for Australia, and so it sort of carries that, I think, in the novel.
I'm going to put you on the spot.
Yes.
Would you like to read a section of the book?
Oh my God. Okay, I'll read it. I'll just read a very tiny bit. Stella did not warn me that this was about to happen, so let's see, what can I read?
Spontaneously.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm going to read something from early in the novel. Okay, so Emily's arrived. She's only just arrived. She's sitting on the veranda with the oldies, feeling really, disgruntled and bored. And she sees Lydia walk across the lawn with her shotgun, and she is riveted. Emily rose from the swinging seat and began to walk across the green expanse of the lawn and into the orchard that encircled the house. She wasn't following Lydia. She was just stretching her legs. If they happened to meet, it would be quite by accident. A flash of yellow silk between the fruit trees was enough to set her in the right direction, and soon after she saw Flea, the tabby cat, winding his way through the layered straps of a row of agapanthus. Fat buds swayed at the top of their long green stems. The agapanthus flower heads were ready to burst, and the shape of the buds, the way they bulged against the green skin that enclosed them, gave her a tingling sort of feeling. She pressed her legs together and felt her thighs touch. Her skin was hot and damp, despite the fitful arrival of the cool change.
Wow.
Is that enough?
Yeah, it's beautiful. So that's The Unexpected Education of Emily Dean by Mira Robertson, out by Black Ink. Let's talk about you as a writer. So you started off as a script writer, but you did want to be a novelist.
Yes, I did. That was my early intention. And I had a number of short stories published, and I had started a novel, and I was really struggling, and I was really finding it difficult. And then my partner, Anna Kokinos, who was at that time, she'd just gone through film school, and she was writing her first film out of film school. And she was struggling too, actually, and she said to me, well, what about you co-write this script with me? I jumped at that chance, threw the not very far into the novel away, and started writing scripts with her, and that sort of set me off on a whole journey of writing for film and for the next sort of 25 years. And I think it was because it was a more collaborative form, and I felt that I wasn't alone with it, and I could do that with somebody else.
Yes, because you can't really do that with a novel. But you talked before about a lack of confidence about approaching a novel.
Yeah, I think absolutely, Stella. I mean, I'm not someone who finds it. I feel passionate about writing. I really want to write, but I don't find it easy. And I had to go through a long sort of period of working on myself, really, to get to the point where I felt that I could write, take that on. And I think the thing for me was the scathing inner voice, the critic that just kept saying, "You're not good enough. Why do it? It's you're no good." So I really had to sort of overcome that inner critic before I was able, or at least partly overcome it, before I was able to, take on the task of writing a novel.
It never really goes away, the inner critic. You have to learn to live with it.
You have to learn to live with it. You have to kind of go, yep, you're there, but, just like, you're there, but I'm not listening. I'm not listening to you.
That's right.
Yeah.
And if you don't have an inner critic when you start...
You will have one at some point.
Because
it's really hard work. I think people don't understand just what demanding hard work it is to write.
Yes.
And that goes for scripts as well, but it's certainly true of writing a novel.
So do you read... Well, let's talk about your reading habits. Do you have reading habits?
They come and they go because, there are times when I read voraciously and read a lot, and then I can sort of go off it and not read very much. But I do read at night in bed, and I read like mad when I'm on holidays. And often when I'm writing, I'll get to the early afternoon and feel like it's gone really downhill and I should do something else. So I'll often read a bit in the afternoons as well.
Yeah. And do you read a lot of Australian books in fiction or non-fiction?
Mostly, I went through a long phase where I didn't read much Australian fiction. I think possibly I was feeling jealous that everybody else was writing and I wasn't. But I'm back into it now. Do read quite a lot of Australian fiction, and there's just so much great stuff and of such variety. So, yeah.
Now, speaking of variety, you've got 3 books for us. You've got a most recent, a neglected gem, and just a bit of a true love.
Okay.
So let's do the most recent.
Okay. The most recent is Charlotte Wood's The Weekend. So I really love this book. It's such an enjoyable read, even though it's quite dark at times. But the characters just engaged me immediately, and I was hooked quite quickly. I just wanted to sink into their world. I really like the way Charlotte Wood used different points of view, so that you get a perspective. You get the character's own perspective on themselves, and then, of course, you get their perspective about the other characters. And so as the book develops, your own view of the characters changes and expands, and that was one of the things I really, really liked about it.
What's it about?
What's it about?
Well, I know that you didn't want to give it away too much. It's called The Weekend, so I'm presuming it's set over a weekend.
It's set over a weekend. The 3 main characters, Jude, who's rather judgmental and uptight, and
I knew she was your favourite.
Well, I kind of identified with her the most, I have to say. So there's Jude, and then who are the other characters? I've just forgotten their names. Wendy and Adele. And the 4th character is Sylvie, who's actually, she's died. She was their friend, and the 3 of them have gone to clean out her weekender in somewhere up by the sea in New South Wales somewhere. So so those 3 characters plus the dog Finn. So they're there for the weekend, and all kinds of things get explored, and old wounds and old enmities, and all kinds of things are sort of so it's a classic setup in a way. But the way that it's a realist novel, but the interesting thing is that she uses the dog Finn, who is like ancient and gruesome, as a sort of way of confronting us with the very real and gruesome physical decay of extreme aging, but she also uses Finn as a way, as a kind of screen on which the women project something of fundamental importance to each of them, and how they are going to overcome that or transcend that thing that they're grappling with. So she introduces something that isn't so realist. It sort of becomes quite spiritual or magical or
So are
something
these
like
all
that.
older women?
Oh yeah, of
Isn't it?
course.
And
they're
it's
all
kind
older
of-
women. They're all in their 70s.
You never
Yeah.
read
Yeah.
much of and it's
Yeah.
a sympathetic book toward them, or?
Well, yes, except that what I really love is the way that Charlotte Wood is. She is not sentimental. She has a sort of acerbic insight into the human condition, and it's you get that, and it's also very funny.
So they're not nice little old ladies.
They are not nice little old ladies.
That's great.
No.
That's
Yeah.
good.
Yeah,
It's
it's
a good
wonderful.
thing. So that's Charlotte Wood's
Yes.
The Weekend, out by Allen and Unwin. And that's your latest read. Tell us about your neglected gem. Now, I have to credit you with coming up with neglected gem. I called it hidden gem, but I'm stealing the neglected gem.
Well, I think this is a bit of a neglected gem. It's The Layers of the City by Antoni Jach. It was published in 1999, so that makes it 20 years ago. So the novel's set in Paris, and right from the beginning, you know you're reading something a bit unusual and unique. It starts in the second person, so it's addressed to you, and it uses the second person. So that's
I don't think I've ever experienced that in a novel.
Yeah, it's pretty
yeah.
unusual, and I think if it's overused, it can become quite sort of annoying or oppressive. But it certainly doesn't strike me as that in this book. And in fact, there are times when it changes anyway, and then it's. I think there's a whole section where it's actually addressed. It's we. It's the use of the first person plural. So that's kind of interesting as well. But it's a novel that doesn't rely on plot. It's all about tone and voice and taking you on this journey through the centuries through the layers of the city of Paris. So the layers of the past, the layers. We go right back to the Romans and
Wow.
the barbarians at the gate, and so there's philosophical ideas and ruminations and sort of really interesting descriptions of place and what else can I say about it? So it's a novel that I love to dip into, and I obviously when I first bought it, I read the whole thing. But
And
now,
you said you felt incredibly smart when you read it.
well, I think it's so erudite and witty that you actually begin to feel that you're a little bit erudite and witty as you read it. So that's a nice part. That's a nice part about it. So, but it's great to read it slowly and read every word to get the rhythms and get the feel of the tone of the book. Yeah.
See, I think when we talk about Australian books, we always think that they have to be set in Australia. Like this one is about Paris.
Yes, and I think maybe that's why it is a neglected gem, because it fits into it feels like a European novel, and even the style of it is more like a Thomas Bernhard or a W.G. Sebald or someone like that.
I'm going to nod like I know what you're talking about.
Well, I wonder whether the author himself, Antoni Jach, may well disagree with me, but those were the sort of reference points that came to me.
That's fantastic. Yeah. So that's The Layers of the City by Antoni Jach. Now, what about your loved book?
Okay, well, of course, there's so many to choose from,
Oh,
but so I had to
Did you have a hard time choosing?
I did have a hard time.
Do you feel like
choosing.
you've betrayed anyone?
Yeah, probably. Quite a few people, actually. So we won't go there, Stella. But this one, this is Tree Palace, written by Craig Sherborne. It's published by Text Publishing, and it came out in 2014. And it's a novel about a family of itinerants that he calls trants, set in the wheat country in northwestern Victoria, which is sort of an area I know. So maybe that's what initially drew me to the novel. It completely won me over with its acutely observed, generous, funny, and deeply moving story. So it's the story of this little odd bod family of trance. Moira is the matriarch, and it takes a little while to realise that she's only in her 30s.
Wow. What year? Did you say what year this was set?
It's contemporary? It's contemporary, yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. So there's Moira, Shane and Midge with 15-year-old Zara, and I think Rory's about 12, but they've got different fathers, and you know it's not all blood related. So they're part of a rural underclass, uneducated, homeless, shiftless. In fact, they are petty crims. They strip empty country mansions, the ones that have been abandoned.
Well, they're not that shiftless.
And then no, actually, shiftless is not. They've actually got a work ethic. That's absolutely true. They've got a really good work ethic. So they strip these empty country mansions for heritage fittings and then sell them on to dealers, who then sell them to rich city people for a lot of money. So they're robbing the poor. They're the poor robbing the rich. So I think that's fair enough. Yeah. But actually, at the same time, their ethics and values are actually a lot better than most of the people who are looking down at them. So it takes you into their world, and within a few pages, I was just really sort of beguiled by them. I think Sherborne's got a fantastic ear for the voices of these characters, the way they speak and the way they think about the world. And, it's just a really delightful read.
Fantastic. So, I'll get you to pile up your books.
Pile up my books.
Yep.
Yes.
So, that is Mira Robertson's Neglected Gem. Recent read and a favourite, and we've got The Layers of the City by Antoni, Charlotte Wood's The Weekend, The Tree Palace by Craig Sherborne. Mira Robertson, thank you for your time today on 30 Books. Don't forget to like and subscribe, leave a comment, and if you do subscribe to my YouTube channel, hit the notification button. I'm Stella Glory, and I'll see you next time.
Thanks, Stella.
Now I do I bought a copy of your book and it cost $29.99, which what do you get out of that? $3?
Yes, I think that's right.
So I've got something for you that you can. I bought you this pencil for $3 and it's for your editing.
Stella, you're so generous. Thank you so much.